Good afternoon, everyone. This is a webinar organized by Habitat for Humanity called The Cities Already Built. We just opened the access to the webinar, so we will wait a couple of minutes when everybody can join. So please bear with us for a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. Again, good afternoon. It's almost 2:05. We will start our webinar now. This is a webinar dedicated to the vacant building conversion to affordable housing under the title The Cities Already Built, organized by Habitat for Humanity International and supported by our very prestigious friends, European city networks like Energy Cities, Eurocities, ICLEI, and C40 Cities. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have a very nice lineup of speakers. Later, I will show them to you. Just to give you some background why Habitat is engaged in this topic. A couple of years ago, we were among the first organizations who started to realize the discrepancy of having so many people in Europe needing access to affordable housing, at the same time having so many flats and buildings not used or non-residential buildings being empty and staying empty for a long time. And at the same time having the climate crisis when building new buildings and houses is not seen to be the perfect solution to address the climate crisis. So we started projects and research and advocacy, and we joined forces with other organizations. We established a community of practice where we try to share good practice and learn from each other and implement projects together. And then we very soon realized that the main implementing partner for vacant building conversion should be the local governments, the municipalities, the cities. And now we try to broaden this community of practice, and this webinar is our first attempt to reach out to many practitioners all over Europe who are already engaged in vacant building conversion or interested in this, especially practitioners who are working at local government level. And we try to create a platform where we can start a dialogue and share good practice about vacant building conversion. The agenda for today is in the next 2 hours, you can see on the screen. First, we asked the 2 city networks to share their thoughts on the relevance of this topic. And first, we will have the representatives of Eurocities and ICLEI. Then we will have 2 longer presentations, one from the European metropolis of Lille, and then the other one from the major development agency of Thessaloniki, Greece. Then we will have, again, an intervention by 2 other city networks, Energy Cities and C40 Cities. And then we will go to another geography, to Central Europe, and we will have presentations from Budapest and Vienna. And then my colleague, Zuzana Matlonova, will talk about Habitat for Humanity's main initiative in this field. And my other colleague, Katarzyna, will speak very briefly how we see this topic featured in recent and current EU discussions. And hopefully, in the end, we will have some time for questions and answers. Just some logistics. The participants won't be able to use their camera or microphone. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We try to check the questions mostly at the end, but we will see if something needs to be asked right after a presentation, then we will address that. So please add any questions and comments in the chat. Also, I encourage everyone to use the chat if you are working on something which is relevant, or you are aware of a publication which could be relevant to this community. Please keep sharing links to documents and events, and anything might be interesting for this group. We really think that this is a learning opportunity. So nobody has an agenda here, but this is a community to learn about good practice, to learn from each other, and hopefully we will have more events like this in the coming year. So without further ado, let me ask first Pietro Revilio from Eurocities to share your thoughts on behalf of Eurocities. Why this is an important topic, how you see the relevance of vacant building conversion to affordable housing from Eurocities' perspective.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. Pietro Revillo, Policy and Research Advisor at Eurocities. Very happy to be with you and to tell you a bit why, of course, housing is important for our cities, but also why conversions of, for instance, offices into housing is an important issue for us. So as you were already presenting before, I mean, of course, we all know that we live in a housing crisis and that housing is a major challenge for most of our cities. Actually, we run a survey every year trying to understand what are the top priorities of our mayors, and we've seen that housing has grown so much into the past 3-4 years, and now is, let's say, the top 2 priority right after climate action, and has been increasing very fast. So maybe a few years ago, it was, I would say, 15% of the mayors that were highlighting housing as one of the top 3 priorities, and now it's close to 1 out of 2. So it's really a problem that is growing, and we know also that thanks also to the efforts of many of our cities coming together and doing advocacy, but also there is quite some recognition now at the European level of the importance of tackling housing. So it's quite important, and for us at Eurocities, the position is clear. I mean, access to adequate and affordable housing must be treated as a fundamental right. That's really our position, and we are really trying to work to not only to push for further support at the European level for housing policies, stronger housing policies, but also promoting this knowledge sharing. And the reason why I'm here is because I'm one of the co-authors of an article that I will put in the chat later on, which is really about reflecting on how we can can move, for instance, from offices to housing, how to make sure that these conversions are helpful. And the reason why we worked on that, I guess many of you will remember during COVID, we saw so many empty offices, and we thought, and I think many of us still think, that now with a lot of people doing remote working, there is an opportunity to convert a lot of the offices that are usually in prime locations into housing, and to create also more, let's say, less monofunctional neighborhoods. So that's something that is quite important. So what we've done is doing a bit of research to understand a bit, of course, the benefits of office to housing conversion. For instance, increasing housing supply without consuming new land, supporting more mixed-use neighborhoods, reducing pressure for urban sprawl, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are lots of positive aspects. What we found is quite interesting in the sense that many cities are trying to experiment and actually building strategies on how to do housing to office to housing conversions. And for example, we looked at Paris, and we found that, for instance, Paris converted close to 2,000 housing units a couple of years ago, and that's what the rate per year, and they're planning to increase it. Of course, we also have to be quite honest that this number still represents a minority, let's say, a small percentage of actually the housing target that these cities has. Also, Brussels, for example, is very advanced. Madrid is trying to also build a strategy to do office to housing conversion. And the reason why I talk about strategies, because it's important to, and many cities understanding, it's important to link conversion as part of a wider urban vision. For instance, in Paris, they're trying to link office to housing conversion with their 15-minute cities vision. And in a way, it's also about making sure that this conversion is embedded in the public planning strategy, because of course you need to make sure that the services will reach out to this new housing that maybe are developed from offices that are maybe not in prime and central locations, and you don't want to create sprawl. So it's very important to embed it into an important strategy. And of course, what we also found out is that at the national level, very often there are regulations that undermine the ability of cities actually to convert these offices into housing because of course, sometimes positive requirements that are about making sure that the quality of these houses respects certain standards. You can imagine that is often very difficult to convert offices, and it's very expensive. So also one challenge that we saw in the article and we put forward is the issue of affordability of these houses that are converted. Since it's so expensive to convert it, they tend to be kind of houses for kind of upper middle class population. So it's very important to embed it in a strategy that makes sure that also these houses are available for also the less wealthy and privileged. So that's a bit what we've been doing. I don't want to spend too much time because I think we will hear a lot of interesting examples. But just one last message is that even if we think this is limited, it's part of a wider, let's say, mix of actions that cities can take to tackle the housing crisis. And we think that also at the European level, there is room to support cities that are trying to innovate, that are trying to work with the national government to set up new regulation, new frameworks to make sure that conversions are possible, but also testing maybe new public-private partnerships to make sure that there are new funding schemes that make sure that also this inclusiveness of the new build is taken into consideration. This is something that should all be part of the European affordable housing plan, of course, and the actions. But I stop here, but I look forward to hearing the next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pietro. I'd love to ask 1,000 questions, but we have to move forward. But hopefully we can discuss it at the end. I asking now Benedetta Buccolini from ICLEI.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Benedetta Buccolini, and I'm here representing ICLEI Europe. ICLEI is a global network of more than 2,000 500 local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. It's clear how local and regional governments are at the heart of addressing Europe's housing challenges, but this also makes them best placed to design solutions that reflect local realities and can better respond to local needs. Europe's housing crisis is not only a urban issue, because while cities struggle with shortages and rising rents, many regions face depopulation, empty homes, and underused infrastructure. This diversity of challenges shows us that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but that addressing the housing crisis requires a complex place-based approach tailored to the different territorial realities. In this context, though, one key opportunity stands out, and this is that across Europe, millions of buildings remain vacant, underused, and instead of focusing solely on new construction, we must prioritize the reuse and the renovation of these existing spaces. Repurposing vacant buildings can provide faster, more affordable housing solution while reducing at the same time pressure on land and limiting environmental impact. We can't see housing needs and climate goals as competing priorities, but rather see them as goals that go hand in hand. We need to plan smartly, reuse what we already have, and design efficiently so that we can meet housing needs while at the same time protecting the climate. Addressing the crisis requires integrated approaches, as also Pietro said before. So starting by recognizing housing as a fundamental human right, so that everyone needs to be granted access to homes that are affordable, safe, and healthy to live in. But it also requires a shift in mindset. So from building more to using better what we already have. We need to combine affordability, we need to combine sustainability with inclusion, and unlocking the potential of vacant spaces can create more balanced, more resilient also, and sustainable housing system that work for the people, for communities, and for the planet. However, unlocking this potential of vacant spaces requires overcoming systemic challenges that cities face. First, funding and resources are major constraints. So financial fragmentation often prevents resources from reaching local level or being allocated directly to the mapping and conversion of vacant spaces. So there is a clear need to develop and deliver more tailored financial support, including alternative financial models, community-led development models, public-private partnerships that can be leveraged to fund large-scale renovation and deep retrofits. There's also a question of technical assistance. So it's essential to help local governments manage the complexity of reusing existing buildings. This includes digital tools, skills for mapping and assessment, data sets, training for renovating the current building stock in terms of skills of the workforce. And this has to be supported by shared best practices, adapted legal and procurement frameworks. This also has to come with stronger coordination vertically and horizontally. So with different actors, with public, both public but also private, civil society and local communities. We can't treat housing in isolation, either because it's closely linked to climate action, to social inclusion, to economic development, to mobility, to spatial planning. So without an integrated and coordinated approach, the reuse of existing buildings for affordable housing will remain fragmented and less effective. To this end, platforms like this one, so promoting knowledge exchange, cross-sector, multi-level coordination are key because they strengthen capacity, they help scale effective solutions, and they connect cities with the support and the funding that they might need. To conclude, the reuse of vacant buildings is not only a technical task, and it's not a standalone task. It's a question also of governance, it's a question of finance, social, cultural. So by strengthening the cooperation as we are doing today and investing in skills and support systems that can better support cities, we can turn underused space into affordable, sustainable, and more inclusive housing solutions. So I'm really looking forward to the experience of the cities in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Benedetta. And I really feel the common platform, what you said and what Pietro said, that to integrate this solution into a wider vision of sustainable cities and sustainable housing. Thank you very much. We now go to the good practice part, the first part of the good practice part. And I'm asking Benjamin Platt from the European city of Lille to share a good practice, how you turn the offices into affordable housing.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming at this webinar. I will present you the project Circular Building Convert, which the aim is to transform offices into housings and develop strategy about that issue. We can go on the next slide, please. Here is all the partners that we have. It's an Interreg project in Northwest Europe. So there are partners from Ireland, France, Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany. We can go to the next slides. We've got so 10 partners, 5 countries. If you don't know Interreg, there are areas, and we are in one of multiple areas which call Northwest Europe. That's why we cannot have partners from Eastern Europe or Southern Europe. And it's from 5 countries. So we have 2 pilot sites. So one big office building in France, in Lille, in the north of France, and one of the pilot sites in Erlen, in the Netherlands, in the Limburg. If we combine both projects, we have 221 using units developed with a third of social housing, which is important because our project is to convert offices into affordable housings. For that, we want to use BIM data and we use logistic in order to develop circularity, because even if you do projects in existing housings, you have a lot of waste. So the aim is to reduce that waste. And we also want to develop joint strategy and training, as all Interreg project must do. And the overall budget is of 8 million euros, but you have 60% that are financed by Interreg. So it really helps, especially and we can have investment subsidies that really help to develop the project and develop the social aspect of the project. We can go to the next slide. For the timeline, we've been agreed in beginning of 2025 by EU. For this year, we are more in the design feasibility phase. So it's about commissioning our architect and conceive the 2 pilot sites in order to be closer to the building permit. We have to begin the works before the end of 2028. So normally we are on time, but we don't have to be late. And we also want to create a tree decision making in order to help operators to choose if it's to analyze if a office building can be converted or not into affordable housings, and also to develop 2 training schemes for local authorities and for operators, engineers. So we can go to the next slide. What are the challenges? So it's very linked with what have been said before. Low-income residents struggle sort of mismatch between homes that we sell on people incomes, especially for low-income residents, and also housing pressure. We saw, for example, in our territory that the cost of the land gained 50% in 10 years. So it's very important. And at the same time, we've got some office buildings that are underused because of teleworking after COVID and are very energy hungry. Also, we have to if we go deeper in the office market, those buildings are not fitted with what companies want now. It's often small units and they prefer large open space. So that's why also they are not really, they don't fit the need for company organizations. But to just have a quick answer of what been said before, there is a potential with our office buildings, but in our territory, there is a much more space for housings in industrial vacant buildings. We have huge amount of industrial vacant buildings. So it's a possibility for solving the housing crisis, but it cannot be the only one. And for conversion of offices into housing, when we began the project, we have a lack of tested, scalable conversion models, especially with circularity in mind. We can go in the next slide. You can see is a pilot site in Lille. You can see that the facade is not really does not really fit with fire issue for home norms. Housing norms, sorry. So that's why we need to do the facade again, and that will cost, but it will be better, and we can also make install loggia or something like that. But it's important for that kind of project to also don't have a lot of patrimonial issues, because you need to transform a lot of things, even if you're in the same building. And you've got at the right the beam modelization of one level. This is very useful in order to know that what we can keep on how we can make a re-employment in situ. You can go in the next slide. What are the objectives? It's to really deliver affordable and comfortable homes, because we have housing crisis at every level, and we have often the problem that the project can be done even the project that go out and are achieved. It's sometimes that the social aspects are lower, social ambitions are lowered, especially the number of affordable housing, of the number of locative social housings, to provide also technical, legal and financial models, because the transform a building that it's not made for housings is it requires a lot of technical aspects, and also the legal, which are different for each countries, but we can to also harmonize. And the financial is it's a very important aspect, especially the cost of land. We want also to increase circularity, because there is still a lot of waste, as I said, and also that the conversion as of offices is a standard, or not their demolition, but compared to industrial buildings, it's not very I would say clever in an economical way to demolish office buildings, because it's way the cost is way higher. We can go to the next slide. For the main results and final beneficiaries. We really want to target low middle income households. And the thing that is good in the pilot site, especially in Lille, is that in this the building is in the city center, so close to public transport. So it can it's a good location for homes that with people who don't really need a car. So it can be good also for environmental ambitions. We want also at the local authority level to develop a strategy to identify which areas are best for targeting conversion, and also the training schemes in order to raise interest and to make think people that it's not as difficult as we expect. We can go to the next slides. For the long-term effect, as already also been said, but strategy of conversion, develop also a norm that can help on not per project. Sorry. Because often in the urban plan, the rules are made for new build homes and not for converted homes. And when you convert the buildings, you have much more constraints than in new build homes. We can go to the next slides. What can be done for other cities? I think, as in a lot of environmental ambitions, it's good to first target the buildings that can easily be transformed and develop a lot of housings. Because if those buildings are still vacant, it's as you say, a discrepancy compared to the need of housings. And it's often easier to transfer. Also, which is very important, is to incent the office owner to reduce the selling price, because before COVID, we were still in the sort of golden era of office buildings, which were developed a lot because they were more suitable financially. And so now they are building from, especially from 70s, are not very, doesn't have a lot of value because they need a lot of cost of energy, especially now with for example, the gas issues. And they are not fit with the needs. So they can't have the price as 10 years before. And also to develop norms that help on not per project, conversion project has much more constraints than the new project, especially because you keep the same building. I think I'm done.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for keeping the time. The main takeaway from me is on your last slide, which corresponds to already what Pietro and Benedetta raised, that everybody is excited about vacant building conversion, but when you really have to do it, it comes down to a lot of national and local regulation, which might block you, and you have to address those blockages to be able to deliver fast this conversion. And I think we all aware of this, that there's a lot of groundwork to do on that. Thank you very much. Now from Western Europe, we move to Southern Europe, and I'm asking Maria Karagiani from Thessaloniki. Yes. And you will talk about another aspect, how to mobilize the vacant homes with the help of the social rental agency model. So Maria, the floor is yours, and you have 12 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I will try to keep to the 12 minutes. So I'm here representing the Social Rental Agency of Thessaloniki. This might be an old idea for countries of Central or Northern Europe. It's very new in our context, and there is nothing similar. So what I want to share with you is the story of its establishment in a context where no national social housing policy exists, let's say. So if we go to the next slide, I want to start by briefly introducing the institution behind the SRA, which is the major development agency of Thessaloniki. And that's because it's an intermunicipal agency. It covers 12 municipalities. And that metropolitan reach is crucial for us because it means that the SRA was conceived from the beginning as a scalable regional model. So in the next slide, please, our approach started from what was already said in the introduction, that social housing works when it has a long-term vision and a local dimension. And we believe that who delivers social housing matters as much as, let's say, how much social housing is built. It has to be a public, municipal, and non-profit actor, not the market, in the driving seat. So next slide, please. From the outset, we, based on that, defined 6 non-negotiable principles for the SRA, which are affordability tied to income, not to market prices, perpetuity, meaning affordability must be permanent, inclusion and dignity for tenants, public control, and a strictly non-profit structure. So in the next slide, what I want to do before moving on to our story is talk a little bit about the challenges, first on the EU level here and then on the Greek level, because context matters. Housing and affordability across Europe is systemic, rents are on the rise. In 2024, we had 93 million people at risk of poverty or social exclusion. And the root causes are well known: the financialization of housing, housing speculation, commodification, and opaque global capital flows are combined more often than not with weakened state capacity to regulate. There is some political momentum, and the EU Affordable Housing Plan and some new funding opportunities are in the right direction. In Greece, in the next slide, the situation is extreme. We are first in many indicators on the EU level. Property prices, for example, in Thessaloniki have risen by 65% since 2016 in 10 years. And tenants spend 40% of their income on housing. That's an average. 85% of low-income households are overburdened, and there's no social housing stock. At the same time, the national policy has focused exclusively on market-based solutions up till now. So in the next slide is our starting point. In 2018, when a national program called Housing and Work aimed to provide housing and work mostly to extremely vulnerable households and homeless people arrived in Thessaloniki, we realized that there was a fundamental problem since there were no affordable homes to rent for those households. The program revealed then the housing market failure and the lack of public institutions that could run these programs. But at the same time, we also knew that there are thousands of vacancies around the city. In the next slide, I have some notes on this paradox that we documented. We conducted 2 studies. The first was in 2020, and it identified 77,000 vacant properties in the metropolitan area. Half of those had prior residential use. In the central municipality alone, we found 16,000 vacant homes. Meanwhile, people cannot find a place to live, and that means that we don't have a housing shortage, we don't have a supply and demand issue, we have a housing access, let's say, crisis. Next slide, please. So very briefly, our first study compiled and analyzed the baseline data on housing in Thessaloniki, precisely because context matters, including demographics, housing costs, drivers of housing inequality. It mapped the vacancies on the city level for the first time, and this multi-source methodology gave us a reliable quantitative estimate at metropolitan scale. Next slide, please. And having identified this problem related to vacancies, we felt the need to have a more detailed study and to look better into three categories: public and institutional property owned by the government, local authorities, public law bodies, foundations, the church in the case of Greece, private property of financial institutions and capital management companies, including funds, and private property of individuals. We used, again, mapping methods based on electricity disconnection data, but we now triangulated them with water disconnection data, pilot field visits in selected districts, and interviews with market experts. We also looked into national cadastre listings, conducted interviews, and looked into auction data to gain a better understanding of not only how many vacancies we have and the geography, but also who owns what and what it would take to socialize those properties. Next slide, please. So here on the left, you can see the electricity disconnections. On the right, the water disconnections for the central municipality in Thessaloniki. And you can see that we have a very high concentration in central urban districts that confirms that we have a major opportunity too. We are not talking about derelict buildings on the periphery, but about apartments scattered in the heart of the city that could be homes. Next slide, please. So building on that, we developed a comprehensive municipal strategy aimed to include to establish and operate the SRA, to mobilize vacant homes through owner incentives, to include energy upscaling and renovation, but also to build links to social programs, including homelessness, advocate to ministries and managing authorities for funding, and advocate for legal reform. All while networking with other municipalities and other authorities, aiming to build a systemic and lasting intervention. Next slide, please. Of course, now this comes with huge challenges. We started with nothing, no legal framework for social housing, no dedicated funding, no public awareness about social rental models, no multi-level governance structures, 0% social housing stock. We had to invent the model from scratch, everything from the legal agreements, the tenancy contracts, the matching system, the renovation process. But that's why what we built in the end has value beyond Thessaloniki, because this methodology can be transferred. In the next slide, I have the map of the 40 apartments we chose to include in the pilot project. These apartments can house, once all occupied, approximately 100 beneficiaries. Properties come from municipalities, public benefit institutions, and so on. And our process involves a legal check, settlement of planning issues, renovation, and energy upgrading. We establish a social rent at 60 to 70% below market prices. We guarantee the rent for at least 8 years, as long as, and also the security of the tenancy. The funding came from the RRF and the Ministry for Social Cohesion in Greece, and we achieved an economy of scale by creating a single tender for all renovations instead of separate ones. In the next slides, and we can move on through the next 3 slides, go to the next one and the next one, you see what we were working with. So when we first entered these properties, many had not been inhabited for years or even decades. Some were good, some were not. And what strikes you every time is this contrast. You have a perfectly located apartment in a neighborhood with schools, with services, with transport, but it's empty, while there are families waiting on waiting lists for emergency housing. Next slide, please. And next, I think. These are some of the things we found in the apartments. Here you can see an example of the work we did in one of the apartments. And next slide. So I'm closing in a little bit. What has the program delivered then beyond the apartments themselves? There are 5 things that we think are really important. The first is the replicable methodology for vacancy mapping that I mentioned. Second, the development of a matching system where there was none. Third, mechanisms for collaboration with municipality and other actors, the governance infrastructure, let's say. Fourth, proposals for legal reform and prototyping agreements. And fifth, a strategy of radical incrementalism, proving that a small, well-designed intervention can create political and institutional conditions for a much larger one. Next slide, please. And the SRA is also not working in isolation, and that's important. It's linked to broader social programs, support for homelessness, energy poverty interventions, and so on, because housing is more than 4 walls. It's linked to health, to employment, to education, to the community. And each home we provide can create positive effects across social services. There's a Housing Europe report that says that eliminating, for example, housing inadequacy in the EU could pay off within 18 months through savings in healthcare and social services alone. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we aim to scale significantly. We're working to secure structural fund support to expand staffing and renovation budgets. We are working with the Council of Europe Development Bank for technical assistance and the social loan facility. There has been a law that was created on the national level after our collaboration with the ministry on SRAs, and we aim to widen the network for social housing delivery bodies across Greece, supporting also other affordable housing models like co-housing. Next slide, please. Of course, we're not there yet. We have a national policy that still focuses overwhelmingly on market-based solutions. A multi-level governance between municipalities, regions, and the central state is weak. Funding is fragmented. Owner persuasion takes time, but these are problems that all cities face more or less. But the strategy of radical incrementalism means that we use each small win to build the case for the next larger intervention. And the next slide. What we want to stress, though, with this presentation, can we go to the next slide, please? Is that it is doable. Thank you. We did it with a very small total budget, especially for the first phase, less than 1 million. No new legislation was required for the pilot. No new public institution was created. What was required was political will at the municipal level, methodological rigor, and a non-profit commitment. So if Thessaloniki can do this from zero, so can other cities. That's it. The next slide is the thank you slide. Our work is ongoing. We welcome exchanges. You can find more information about us, and I'm also happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Very impressive. And also it shows how long it takes and how much data you have to get and do the groundwork research to be able to do this. And I think your phrase, radical incrementalism, stays with us as a good slogan and a good advice. So thank you for that. We have one question for Benjamin about the price per square meter.
I'm waiting the answer, so I can say it. It's if we are at the price for people who want to live there, if we are in the rent of social housing in France, which are at least 25% of the all buildings in France of houses, the rent is between 6 and 7 euros per meter square compared to market rates at 14 euros per meter square. So it between 50% lower. And that kind of housing that we want to compose at least the third of housings of the project. For the affordable housings that can be buy, we often use CLT model and we are in between 2,500 and 2,900 with non-speculative clause that you can sell higher your homes higher when you leave the home, and it has to be your home. You can loan it to anyone. And for intermediate location, what is gaining more and more interest, it's between 9 and 11 euros. So compared to 15 euros in the market rents.
Thank you. Could you please put this down in writing also in the chat? Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think there's this question to Maria about what is the current number of apartments as part of the SRA, and if other cities in Greece already replicated this model. Just briefly.
Thank you. Very briefly, we have 40 apartments of which the renovation has been completed. We are working on securing the funding, expected from September onwards to make them 100 at this point. And no other municipalities yet, but there is some interest from some regional authorities. The call for the establishment of SRAs has been included in the funding calls of all regions in the country. So there are some steps in this direction, but still there is not enough capacity, staffing, knowledge, and so on. We're getting there. I'm sorry, except for Athens, which was also included in the pilot project phase alongside Thessaloniki, but had some extra struggles trying to work with private properties primarily, which didn't go really well.
Thank you. I also encourage all of you again to please post links to projects or publications or events which could be interesting for this community. And now we are going back to city networks, European city networks, to share their views about why this vacant building conversion for affordable housing is a relevant topic. And I'm calling now Melanie Bourgeois from Energy Cities first.
Thank you, and thanks a lot for the first presentation and for all what we've learned. So I work for Energy Cities. It's a network of cities of all sizes that focus on the climate action and energy transition led by municipalities. Within our membership, we have seen that cities and municipalities are much more interested in the conversion of vacant building into affordable housing in the last years. We have said it before, it's mainly because of the context that they are facing with housing shortage and the need to provide more affordable options. In many cases, they also have assets that they want to know what to do with it, especially public buildings, but also potential in the residential sector, in offices. So very different form also of vacant building that could be transformed. And also our cities, they shared with us that they see the importance of reducing the use of land, of materials and of energy at the scale of a city, either because they are constrained by law to do so, reducing land take, reducing their energy consumption, or also because it's part of their climate adaptation, biodiversity strategy. So there are many reasons that they can look at tackling this potential of vacant building. It leads them anyway to rethink how the city is shaped and how the urban planning work most of the time. So it's a big work for the cities. There is also this dimension that some members stressed recently. It's that by limiting the urban sprawl, we enable people to live again. We bring people back in the city centers, and it's actually important policy to have at the moment where the price of energy and transport especially are soaring, And bringing people back in the city center is also a way to reducing long and costly commutes for some population that want to live in the city center, but where it was too expensive for them. So this policy about turning vacant building into affordable housing is redesigning cities and is also offering affordable way of living, not just for the renting, but also for the way of living and the cost that can be associated with it. Today, it's not, let's say, the mainstream approach to turn vacant building into housing when you have housing needs. Cities still face important challenges. Today we hear a lot about pilot projects because cities are really trying, but in general there is a technical complexity, and the main difficulties that the cities share with us is that it's very time consuming as an approch, because you need first to have the data, then you need about what kind of buildings are vacant and where are they. And then it's almost a door-by-door work to try to find who are the owners, how can you turn this building into something affordable for the future. So it's very time-consuming for the cities to do it. But despite that, we see strong enthusiasm from small towns in rural areas, also big cities. We have example in Croatia of Krizevci, that is a rather small town, and that is transforming a former military building into affordable housing, and they have engaged and won a prize from the New European Bauhaus for their project. So some more like pilot projects like this, but also more structural ones like Utrecht in the Netherlands, that have this new vacancy law where owners have to report vacancy when their buildings are vacant, and the city encourage them and propose to them solution to rent them out. And otherwise, after a while being on this vacancy registry, the city will fine them. And thanks to this measure, the city of Utrecht has already dropped long-term vacancies by 20% just in the first year of their law. So it's also good to show that there are measures that work also in the short term to reduce vacancy, because some projects are rather long, but this one was successful already in the first year. So just a few words to say that Eurocities has this topic of vacant building at the heart of our work. It will be the topic of one of the topics in our annual forum in 2 weeks in Portugal, in Guimarães. We have started different EU projects to explore further how to support cities in this way, how to work with one-stop shop, how to work with vulnerable population in their cities. So we're very active on this. And we're very happy also that Habitat for Humanity have started this initiative, because we think it's great to build this community of cities to share experiences and scale up the solutions that we hear from different cities. So thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to hear the following presentations.
Thanks, Melanie, and thanks for highlighting again the urban planning element of it, and also integrating this into a wider urban strategy, and also raising awareness about the complexity of this, and still being enthusiastic about this. So I think that's the realistic mix of viewing this. Thank you for that. And now I'm asking Caitlin Dietz from C40 Cities to share your views on this.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for dedicating the time. It's really nice to have this kind of space to share perspectives. I'm Caitlin Dietz, the Clean Construction and City Business Engagement Manager at C40 Cities, a global network of nearly 100 of the world's leading mayors committed to equitable climate action. I definitely support the position shared by all of the previous speakers. I mean, housing is a human right, and to ensure the adequate, affordable, low carbon housing for all within the planetary boundaries. It's quite a challenge. We will need all hands on deck and to make strategic, efficient use of all available resources. And thus, here we are talking about vacant and underused spaces. I mean, by this point, I think we're all familiar with the environmental arguments for adaptive reuse. You know, the global building stock is expected to double by 2050. The construction sector consumes 30% of resources extracted globally. Yet we have this great potential because reusing buildings avoids 50 to 75% of the embodied carbon emissions generated by new construction. So to the extent possible, we have to be promoting this, avoiding unnecessary demolition and avoiding unnecessary new construction and focusing instead on making the most of what we have. C40's clean construction program, we have a clean construction hierarchy that shows very clearly this prioritization with the first and most important action being to prioritize the better use, repurposing, and retrofitting of existing buildings. And I mean, especially in the European context, the bulk of the construction sector activity really should be shifting increasingly from new build to focusing on retrofitting what we already have. And we see that with the attempted, with the renovation wave, that this is definitely a focus that's shared across the sector and different levels of government. So we agree on the why, I think, at this point of the webinar as well. I want to focus on the how, from a city perspective. How do we actually deliver these affordable housing conversions? Well, the barriers have been named already, regulatory, financial, social barriers that keep this being more of an exception than a norm so far. I think first, a key point is the pragmatic conversion building codes. So to scale, we have to overcome the regulatory barriers, like many building codes are designed for new construction only, so they have impossible requirements for a conversion, such as mandatory car parking quotas that perhaps just cannot be met. I also want to highlight that with this context of the urgent need for affordable housing, we cannot allow that to mean that conversions result in substandard living conditions. And I'm sure you've all heard some unfortunate stories of how office to housing conversions have resulted in substandard housing. So I think it's important to balance this with rigorously safeguarding occupier well-being, ensuring homes meet a minimum quality standard for natural light, ventilation, space minimum, fire safety, and so on. This all points to further emphasizing the importance of starting with proper mapping of vacant and underused spaces and qualifying which buildings are actually viable for home conversion. So I think it's important that codes not be just a general deregulation for conversion to housing, but rather something that's flexible and pragmatic, streamlined, yes, for adaptive reuse, but protecting public interest while removing these arbitrary hurdles. In the case of Madrid, for example, a temporary framework allows 30% of an office building's floor area to be converted to social housing without having to amend existing urban plans. So having specific opportunities, but with these quality controls is clear. And that's also, I mean, a key part of making these projects economically viable is reducing the perceived risks and delays through the planning process that deters developers and investors. Further on this financial point, really, they're complex technical projects that's been established. And if we're doing this for affordable housing, on top of that, with below market rents, it means developers have lower profit margins. So we have to think outside the box with some financial incentives to make this type of project especially attractive. I think we have to be careful with how we leverage it, but publicly owned buildings and land can be with long-term leases or specific financial incentives for development by non-profit or limited profit social housing developers. And then there are other targeted financial incentives like tax credits, grants, low interest loans, or risk sharing with the city administration. Again, in Madrid, the Reviva program, where the city acts as a grantor, so taking on the role of working with a private home landlord to take on the costs of renovating and take on guaranteeing that the landlord will be paid rent, and the city renovates and then places low-income tenants into these apartments that were otherwise sitting empty because landlords didn't see enough of an incentive or had too high of a perceived risk of renting. And of course, cities can also deploy sticks in addition to the carrot incentives, like taxes on vacant properties, as is done in Vancouver, pushing, in that sense, unused space to be less profitable, let's say, to reduce speculative empty spaces. And finally, I would just reiterate a point made by the others that it's really important that this is seen, and we really unpack what the social benefits of adaptive reuse are. It's not just an architectural challenge; it's a social opportunity to harness one of the most beautiful benefits of repurposing, which is maintaining the architectural heritage of cities, the identity, the history of existing buildings. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about people's connection to place, pride, belonging. This is what heritage preservation and maintaining existing buildings can also largely contribute to. I agree that this is a way to reduce pressure on greenfield development and to make the best use of existing urban civic infrastructure, such as for transport and energy. Just an example from Cork, Ireland, the Springville House is a really nice one to highlight. A vacant office converted to age-friendly 35-unit social housing. It's connected to a right-sizing scheme where elderly residents could move into more accessible, smaller central apartments and free up larger homes elsewhere in the city. And also kind of focusing on harnessing this access to services and multi-use area. In conclusion, I mean, it's really wonderful for us as a city network alongside these others to be in support of Habitat for Humanity's Empty Spaces to Homes initiative, and proud to put our weight behind this and collaborate to overcome the challenges together. Thanks.
Thank you, Caitlin, and thanks for the rich variety of examples you gave and highlighting again the pragmatism and the complexity at the same time. Now we go back to good practices from cities, and we are moving back to Central Europe. And first, I'm calling Balin Misetic from Budapest to talk about how they are currently turning a school building into affordable housing.
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks for the invitation and for the interesting presentation so far. So I will first very briefly talk about the context, the local context of Hungary and Budapest in terms of housing affordability. Then we'll briefly talk about the goals of the municipality of Budapest, where I work. And then finally, I will talk about ongoing and planned projects specifically on the conversion of unused non-residential buildings into affordable new housing units. So as you can see in the next slide, whereas housing affordability is an issue and is increasingly an issue all throughout Europe, there is a particularity about the Hungarian case, which is that of all EU member states, since 2010, the price of housing increased the most, most in Hungary, and this is the national average. Of course, in the capital city of Budapest, high house price increase has been even more pronounced. And in fact, as you can see in the next slide, the increase in house prices was higher in Budapest than in other Central Eastern European capitals in the recent period. The relationship between average wages and average rents is also similarly bad, but what I wanted to show you as the third figure on the next slide is that what is, well, not a Hungarian specificity, but more of a post-socialist Eastern European specificity is the super ownership structure of the housing market. As you can see, from 1990, essentially the transition to free market capitalism, when of all housing units in Budapest, around 50% was state-owned. Now, this has been decreased to below 5%. It is only around 4% now, and it is an additional difficulty for us, and for the municipality of Budapest in any case, that there are 23 different district-level local authorities in Budapest, with an unusually large level of authority and autonomy. And most of the remaining public housing units are actually owned by the district local authorities and not by the municipality of Budapest. For all of these reasons, however, as it is shown on the next slide, the goal of broadening the affordable rental sector cannot but be one of the main policy goals of the municipality of Budapest. The municipality has been trying to advance this goal in a variety of ways in the past years, including through the inclusion of privately owned units, with the starting of a metropolitan housing agency, social rental agency, essentially started a few years ago. It is still relatively small, which is about bringing in publicly owned housing units one by one. The municipality also started to make or plan agreements and arrangements with private developers, which ensure that a certain percentage of the newly built housing would be used by the Metropolitan Housing Agency. And there is also at least the planning of a much more long-term and much more ambitious project, which concerns the housing development of a very valuable and good location brownfield area, which became recently the property of the municipality. As you can see on the next slide, it's a vast area on which around 10,000 new housing units will be built, alongside the creation of a new large park. And the decision of the city council was that 20% of the newly built housing units will need to be affordable rentals. Now, of course, at this point, it is not defined that affordability, what would that mean? It would be affordable to whom? But nonetheless, this is still the most ambitious housing plan of the municipality since decades. Now, returning to the approaches and instruments on the next slide, of course, we reach the conversion of vacant non-residential buildings. On the next slide, I present to you the main basic details of the ongoing project, which is funded by the European Urban Initiative. The name of the project is Affordable Housing for All, and it is a complex project which includes all sorts of other interventions, including the strengthening of prevention and early intervention, and housing-focused social work and participation, and so on. However, and this was, to be honest with you, the most important reason why we applied, it also finances the development of new affordable housing units through the conversion of an old school building. As you can see on the next slide, this is a three-story, this is fast, three-story and in some parts two-story vacant school building. In fact, most all current ongoing or planned projects that focus on conversion relates to school buildings. Because of the fertility decrease after the fall of socialism, there are less and less children, and then there are less and less need for spaces for schooling. So this actually one part of a former school building will be converted by the end of this year to a to a new near zero energy residential building, and within that 26 new public housing units, the smallest of which would be 39 square meters and the largest 100 square meters. And on the next slide, I present to you some of the basic data on the costs. So the European Urban Initiative finances close to half of the overall budget. These ratios actually quite, like, they tend to fluctuate on the basis of like how strong the Hungarian currency is. But approximately half will be financed by the EU, the other one directly by the municipality. And here you can also see the costs per flat and the costs per square meter, understood here as the floor area of housing units. So in this net sense. So this is the only ongoing project, where workers are already working on the conversion, but we have some further plans. On the next slide, you can see that Budapest actually planned a European Union structural funds finance project specifically for the renovation and extension of the public housing stock from the European Regional Development Fund. This project should have started years before, but because of the, how to put that politely, because of the legal disagreement between the European Commission and the, by now, ex-Hungarian government about corruption and rule of law, these funds were withheld, and even though the municipality of Budapest is not really guilty of these rule of law violations, we were also on the losing end of it. But now maybe there's a hope that eventually these projects will be able to start, and the first of these would be the conversion of the other part of that old school building, which I just talked to you before, with another 26 public housing units. And as you can see on the next slide, the municipality also planned for the reconversion of another larger ex-school building, also located in the 4th district of Budapest, which is the northernmost district of the Pest side. And the planning process here was actually supported by another small direct EU fund within the Ascend project, and therefore it is connected to the planning and at least partial creation of like a zero or net, I don't know, energy district. I'm sorry, I'm not good with English terms in this area. And then in the last slide, I tried to answer some of the questions that the organizers kindly asked me to do, in particular about what could be interesting lessons, for other cities, which is a really hard question to answer from Budapest, because Budapest and Hungary in general, is so much behind in terms of affordable housing development or social housing development that it's, but I don't want to be prejudiced in this respect, so I will just share a few reflections very briefly. The most important challenge we faced was that you, under very unfavorable circumstances, you have to make do with what you have. However, what you find out as a solution within this context might not be the same as what could be then scaled up, or what would be the optimal policy solution if you had some more resources or some more authority or somewhat less unfortunate or adversarial policy context. It is also a challenge for the municipality to find ways to finance such housing developments and within that conversions without necessarily being able to access similar grants, which financed in the ongoing project around 50%, and in the planned projects 100% of the costs. Which is not usual. It is unusually favorable. We also face some local political opposition against social housing or affordable housing or public housing or anything like that, which is probably motivated by an anti-homeless and an anti-Roma prejudice. But in any case, just as these beneficiary groups, social housing or public housing as such is also stigmatized. So we need to work around that. An interesting dilemma that now we face, that the municipality will be able to rent new apartments in newly built or converted housing units, is to find a good balance between needs-based housing allocation, which was prioritized very much in the past years, and the creation of some sort of social mix, or the prevention of the creation of housing residential buildings which would concentrate poverty within themselves. And I was also asked to reflect on what we are proud of, and we are, I suppose, proud of having worked on the first new affordable housing developments of the municipality since the transition. Which is not something to be proud of, that it was the first in the last 40 years, but nonetheless. Thank you very much for your attention, and of course I'm also available for questions or discussions outside of this meeting. In my email can be shown, or can be seen down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Balint, and really congratulations for the last 7 years in working in this very difficult political environment, which hopefully will change now to a more friendly environment. Yeah, it was super interesting to see how you can really start in small. I think it was a good example actually of this radical incrementalism, that within very limited resources you start something, but with the vision that you can replicate this further. Thank you for that. And now we move to our sister city in Central Europe, Vienna. So I'm asking Michaela Kauer to share a good practice when in Vienna you turned, I think, an industrial building into affordable housing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invite. I'm really pleased to be part of this important exercise, I must say. Of course, I'm very happy thank you to the whole team of Habitat for Humanity for organizing this. I know it's not easy to bring all of these different perspectives together, so congrats for that. I am sharing a bit of about Vienna with you today. It's not going to be a long story because I brought only 3 examples. But I just wanted to highlight a little bit of philosophy behind and also give you some numbers. So if I can have the next slide, please. So you know that we are a city of 2 million inhabitants, close to, as you can see on the little map, a lot of interesting cities around. Budapest, Maribor, Győr, Bratislava, Krakow. So we are really at the heart of Europe, I would say. In our city, we would have like 160,000 buildings, which are for housing purposes. And they include like 1.1 million flats. So of these flats, we have 905,000, which are with the primary use. So the people who are living in those buildings are really those who are the primary users, and who do not have, so they would be their first housing address. And there are 45,000 which are secondary homes. And then we have the 100,000 roughly without either a primary or secondary use. So these are below 9%, about 9% of the total stock, which is below the Austrian average, I must say. Yeah. In Austria, we have cities like Salzburg. You may be aware of that. where you have a higher proportion, or Innsbruck, a much higher proportion. Even on the countryside, in the mountainous areas, in the Alps, we have higher proportions of vacant buildings. So in this sense, if I can have the next slide, please. So just one rough slide to show you a little bit the picture of municipal housing. In Vienna, which is the green dots on the map of Vienna, are in fact municipal housing buildings. And this shows you clearly that our system is distributed all over the city. And just one number, because maybe you know it, I mention it very often, of 2 million people, 500,000 live in municipal housing, and another 400,000 live in cooperative housing. And that already makes a big difference with regard to the whole overall market, in housing market in Vienna. So if I can have the next slide. This is a little bit, I only found it in German, but out of this 9 or 10% of vacant flats, there is also a different distribution across the Viennese districts. So those who are, let's say, more wealthy districts will have a higher proportion than districts with a rather middle class and working class population. This is just to show you a little bit that there is a difference between the different areas of the city, nevertheless. Yeah. So all these data that I gave to you are based on Statistik Austria numbers. So the next slide is already my first project that I want to share with you. We have the gasometer city, which is obviously gasometers are gas tanks which were built at the end of the 19th century to provide the city with gas. And already back in 1995, we started to reduce the gas supply. We are still working on that. We have a phasing out of gas vision and aim until 2040 for the city of Vienna, very ambitious. But with the gasometers, we started already in the mid-90s to think about how can we make different use of those, because they are interesting structures. They are protected by the cultural heritage. So they are really listed monuments. And what happened after quite a process where we have also high-level Jean Nouvel, Coop Himmelblau, as architects involved in that project. Today, these are complexes with 600 homes, 400 student homes, a concert hall, offices, and a shopping mall. Primarily young families and students live there. It's in a district which is on the eastern part of Vienna, and most of the housing is subsidized, but also we have some privately owned apartments. So it's a mixed use, and I think this is one of the most iconic conversion projects that we have to share in Vienna, because it's an industrial use of something where you would never have thought that this can be used as homes, into something which is now good for families and has also rearranged a bit the whole area around it. So the next slide, please. Sargfabrik it's a little bit tricky here. This is, Vienna has sometimes, in Vienna we are known for having a very strange relationship with death. But this is, I don't know, this is part of our culture. And we always say the Central Cemetery is the funniest place in Vienna, because a lot of funny people have been buried there. Anyway, for a cemetery, you need coffins. And in a former coffin factory, there is a project which is called Sargfabrik, so that means coffin factory. And it was transformed also a few years ago into a project with a lot of cultural and political aspirations by a non-profit association. Again, this was building a community by sharing resources, by turning it into floors where we have housing, we have commons, we have a daycare center, we have a lot of different aspects to build a good community. And this is also something that we would like. I wanted to highlight to you because again, it's a transversion of a former industrial building into a living cultural social space, which is also which is creating a new community of people there. So it's very much based on the strong engagement of the residents. And to help everybody with this, can I have the last slide, please? We have an agency which is like a little company that is working on behalf of the city of Vienna, and several policy groups are strongly involved in this. And in German it would read Kreative Räume Wien, but in translated into English it's Creative Spaces Vienna. And this is really a center that offers services to activate vacancies, to also including by using them in some interim way. We have established this since 2016. We have started to really do a lot of interesting projects. And there are one of the projects that I want to highlight is the one in the picture on this slide, which is a former hospital. So again, a different use. Before, this is a hospital where we are, which we are reconverting again into different uses. This will become a place for artists and residents with a lot of cultural space. So again, different approach. I think in Vienna, we are a city of culture very much, and very often we do see a need for artists also to have a room, to have space which is accessible. This will be with kindergartens. So also female artists will be able to use this in a sound way, because as we all know, a major part of the care work is on the shoulders of women. So if women are artists, very often there is a need to also organize the family, and this is why we will include in that project, for instance, also a childcare facility. So this is something where which I wanted to highlight as well, because if you look at the website, you will see a lot of other projects. It's not only about buildings, because they have a broader portfolio. They're also looking into small spaces which are underused, or places, small places in the city where you can create green. Our new urban development plan foresees that we really continue to make our city even greener, because we all know that the heat waves are really an important factor with regard to the health of our citizens. So we need to have a greener city, and to have it also in the places where the environment is really densely built. So they're finding and identifying spots where you can put more green. It's one of the nice tasks of that agency that I wanted to share with you. The last slide will give you a lot of information which you can access by links. I try to find most of it by also in English. Yeah. So, and this is what I have to say from Vienna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's very inspiring as always. I think you again. How should I say? You went beyond my expectations, because you not only shared good practices from Vienna, but I think the good practice is that for 10 years now you have an agency to address vacancy in the city, which is quite unique, I think. And probably at a next iteration, we should invite someone from that agency to share how that agency can serve a city for vacancy conversion. Thank you very much. Now I turn to my colleagues at Habitat for Humanity, because we also would like to share some good practice with you. And I'm asking my colleague Zuzana Martonova to talk about our Empty Spaces project and how we see this cooperation with cities.
Thank you very much, Judy, for handing over, and thank you to all of the inspirational speakers that went before our presentation that we will share with you today. My name is Zuzana Matlonova, and I represent Habitat for Humanity International. As many of you know, we are a global international organization, and we work in housing, where our very mission is to actually secure the safe and decent place to live for the communities all across the world, 70 countries where we operate, and where we do building, renovation, improving housing, advocating, and also fundraising in order to improve the affordable housing policies and the systemic change. We are very happy to hear all of the stories that you shared with us from all geographical directions in Europe. And we do believe that with our project, Empty Spaces to Homes, or ESTR as we call it, we are on the side of the solution. We can go to next slide, actually. On our very last webinar that we held on December last year, and some of you were present there as the speakers or as the participants. In our presentation, the last slide was on our 50 cities vision. And today I'm actually opening the presentation with our 50 cities vision yet again, just to remind us where we are moving with all of the work that we are doing in empty spaces. It's that by 2030, we aim to partner with 50 European cities to convert some portion of their stock of empty spaces into affordable and energy efficient homes. And I believe that all of us, as we are here, are the part of this movement and of this journey, because we heard it in multiple presentations that the first step is the toughest one. We have to start somewhere. It was Maria who mentioned that. It was also like Balint. And the thing that also was very pleasant to hear was the very first presentation by Pietro from Eurocities, who mentioned the mind shift or the paradigm shift from the mayor's perspective. Like 10 or 15 years ago, it was probably 1 out of 15 mayors who would put housing and affordable housing as their priority. And now it's 1 out of 2 mayors. So I believe that we are on a good pathway. We can go to next slide. Actually, originally, when we usually present on our Empty Spaces program and on this project, we start with the big data, who actually very much reflect on the overall situation in Europe and in the single countries where we actually operate. But today I decided to start with sharing the story of the city of Bytom and to start with Poland. And this doesn't come up as a surprise for the colleagues from Habitat, because actually Poland is one of our 3 countries in the project of Empty Spaces to Homes, which actually has the demonstration built, where we on the small scale are proving that the concept is working. And then as the next step, we aim to do a large scale. So when it comes to the project, we are focusing on 3 pillars. When it comes to conversion of empty spaces into affordable housing, and it is the social pillar, it is the financial pillar, and it is environmental argument and environmental pillar to the conversion. We do the demonstration builds also in Great Britain, and we plan to do one in Croatia within this project. But today I will talk about Poland, because over there, this story, I would say, is the most developed. So let's start with the data, because this data pretty much in the city of Bytom reflect the situation in Poland, and the situation in Poland pretty much reflects the data as all across Europe, as we could hear today. So in Poland, currently, we have around 1.8 million residential buildings empty, and thousands of families are struggling to access affordable housing. When we come to the city of Bytom, which on the pictures, you can actually see that it's post-communistic, heavily industrialized city, which it was very much focused on the mining industry and the heavy industry. And after the fall of the communism in 1989, it actually proved that the mining is no longer financially efficient. And thus the region started to reinvent itself. Obviously, the demographical curve went down. Many buildings remained empty. And today, the data speaks volume for itself. The unemployment rate in the region is 6 to 7%, which is more than the average in Poland. The city of Bytom is 150,000 inhabitants, so it's like middle-sized city in the Silesian region, and it has the whole city of 150,000 inhabitants, it has only 330 social housing units available. More than 1,400 households opposed to that remain on the waiting list for the social housing. There is around 800 empty buildings in the city. Out of these 800 empty buildings, 500 is owned by the municipality. So that's just the starting data to the overall setting the scene and the situation. When we go to next slide, this is where we showcase the building before and after. It was a residential building from the 19th century with historical heritage that was converted into the building that you see on the right side of the picture. It was actually a very sound building, but it needed to reconstruct everything from the outside and also from the inside. I will tackle the budget as well, but before that, I just want to say that it was financed and reconstructed as well in 2 phases. In first phase, it was reconstructed from the structural operational fund in the programming period of 2014 and 2020. And it was within the allocation of 21 million zloty, which is around 5 million euro, whereas 21 residential buildings across country were renovated. The city of Bytom tenement house, which is this one, was actually one of them. During this first wave of renovation, the roof was renovated, the outer facade was renovated, it was insulated from the outside, and the windows were changed. That was the first wave. Then in the second wave of the renovation, where Habitat for Humanity stepped in, which was from June 2024 to April 2025, the entire interior of the building was renovated, which means that removing old plasters from the inside were replaced. The wooden flooring was refurbished and replaced. The entire basement was renovated, and installing new plumbing and sewage, electrical system and ventilation, everything from the inside was redone. This was financed by Rapid Response Fund, which was the fund allocated especially for the refugees from the Ukraine as the war broke out. And when we go to next slide, the overall budget for the second wave of renovation, as you can see, was around 210,000 euros. So it was for a very, I would say, reasonable price. We are talking about the space of around more than 500 square meters. Out of these 500 square meters, 4 residential units were created. Every unit is from 50 to 70 square meters, and currently it's everything done and finalized, and there are 3 Ukrainian refugee families residing over there and 1 Polish single-headed household, which is actually single mother with her 4 children. The selection criteria for this one, for the residents, was actually conducted and orchestrated by the city of Bytom. And the basic criterion was that the future residents that were on the waiting list should not exceed their monthly income by 650 euro. And on that basis, the city, and on other criterion, the city then actually picked the residents. Efficient and low carbon was actually the big part of this transformation. I think it was Caitlin who tackled this, and she was talking about a also strong environmental argument to the renovation. Our data show that we can save up to 85% of embedded carbon when we renovate instead of knocking down and building anew. In this particular building, we are still collecting the data using our tool of the life cycle carbon assessment for embedded carbon footprint. But so far, it actually clearly shows that the energy's consumption actually dropped after the insulation and all reconstruction works by 53%, and the heating demand dropped by 46%. And we are still measuring the CO2 emissions dropping. When we go to next slide, this is actually the showcase and intentionally also showing the people who actually were helping during the renovation, because financially wise, it was obviously the state help from the structural funds who actually provided around 800,000 euro. Then it was around 200,000 euro provided by Habitat for Humanity, which was fundraised money from the private donors. And there was actually more than 2,000 hours of the volunteering. There were volunteers both from Poland and also from United States. Together, 146 volunteers who actually help to renovate this very building. It just showcases that there is a very strong component of various stakeholders stepping in the game to renovate a building. It really takes the village to raise the child and to renovate the building as well, as it seems. So this is the basic data and the story of Poland. We did also the research in other countries, and I know that my colleagues also from Great Britain and from Hungary are present, where the data are very similar, I mean, showing the same direction. From the research that was conducted, for example, by Habitat for Humanity in Great Britain, it clearly shows that from 2021 to 2025, the empty building stock in Britain that is municipality owned rose from 6,000 to 8,000. And if this was converted, we could create 25,000 new homes. That's the data from Great Britain, for example. If we stay in Great Britain and we would still convert to 25,000 homes that stay empty, or dwellings, 175,000 privately owned dwellings that stay empty, we could actually potentially deliver more than 500,000 new homes in Great Britain. Balint was actually showcasing some data from Hungary. We did the thorough research in Hungary as well. The data are very similar. Housing supply and demand are really striking in Hungary, both in housing prices, where in Hungary, the surge of the housing prices was really very high in last 10 years, 148% overall in Hungary when it comes to housing prices. And when it comes to the vacant spaces, out of 4.5 million dwellings currently in Hungary, around 570,000 stand empty, which is quite a huge portion. While 3 million people out of 10 million Hungary, or is it 11 million, 10, 11 million Hungary, 3 million people live in housing poverty. So you see that this, I would say, paradox of affordability and on the other hand, like the social situation in housing is very similar all across Europe. In Croatia, where we did the research, thank you, Judy, 9.5 million people in Hungary, I was almost there. In Croatia, nearly 1/3 of the homes are staying empty out of the housing stock, especially in big cities such as Zagreb, Osijek, and also Split. So you see that geographically wise, the data show the same trend. We have affordability crisis, which is nothing new. And on the other hand, we have so many dwellings laying empty. Let's go to the next slide.
We need to wrap up very soon, sorry.
Yes, okay, Judy, I'll do the job on this one. So we can actually skip this slide and go right to the next one. Thank you so much. So overall in Europe, we conducted a very interesting research conducted by Andrew Cartwright. And I will not go to the details because I see that it's 10 to the end of the webinar. So the housing prices are growing faster than the wages. in Europe, in the last 10 years, the data show that the houses and the prices of houses rose by 48%. Also, the composition on the side of demand is changing. More people are demanding the households for the single-headed households or for couples without children. Whereas when the buildings that stay empty right now were built, the composition was completely different. It was usually 2 parents and 2 kids. Huge increase in construction costs doesn't make it easier, but let's go to the next slide. Residential vacancy rates, I believe that this slide speaks for itself, and you will have the chance after the webinar when we will share probably some of the presentation to go through this one, which actually just showcase the European countries and the residential rates nationally opposed to the big cities, mostly capitals. Let's go to next slide. Percentage of vacant dwellings and seasonal homes, the same one. I think that the statistics speaks for itself as it is showcased over here. So we can go to next one. And housing prices, as I said, are significantly different in many parts of Europe. As you can see, Central Eastern European markets that were not regulated at all, the houses prices went more than 150% since 2015. Whereas in some countries such as Finland, France, for example, in Finland, it was only by 5% of the housing price increase in the last 5 years. So it very much varies throughout Europe and is very country sensitive. Let's go to the next slide. Innovative aspect of our project, and I will end up on this one. It's very actually holistic because we are obviously doing the research to have the data at hand so that we can operate and advocate, change policies and shift the paradigms in the system. We are also putting a lot of emphasis on the environmental argument, where we actually created very custom-made tool for measuring embedded carbon of CO2 emissions in the renovation of the buildings, and we are conducting the renovation and are happy to share the data once this is finalized in all 3 countries where we are demonstrating, and that's Poland, Great Britain, and Croatia. And very importantly, we are working on the development of the financial models to make it sustainable in all of the countries where we operate this project. It's a very holistic approach. We do believe so. But it's also necessary to collaborate with all of these stakeholders together to actually, step towards the common goal of ourselves to increase the affordable housing stock. Let's go to the next slide. This is our project. Slide speaks for itself, I believe, on the activities. The next slide. The same one, I won't go into detail as there is no time. And this is my very, very last slide, where you can see the recommendations from our end. Okay, next slide still. Where you can see the recommendations from our end. We need to start somewhere. We established the piloting in 3 countries. We plan to scale up as the next phase, and we plan to enlarge the network. Hence, this webinar is one of the first steps along this pathway to actually achieve this. We are willing to create a movement, to lead, to launch awareness campaign, to earmark funds, and to advocate for funds on European and on country level, and also on municipality level. And by all of this, we plan to empower. And thank you for being with us on this pathway. And on this note, I would end up on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Susie. I'm sorry we had to wrap up. We will share the presentation. I think it was a good segue. We'll skip our last presentation in the sake of time. I just want to promote 2 events. One is that there will be an ICLEI event in collaboration with Habitat for Humanity Poland and IRMIR on the 20th of May in Warsaw. It's in the chat. And also next Monday, we are organizing a conference in Brussels, and I posted the link. You can join online. There is a session about vacant building conversion where some of the speakers today will speak again. I want to give floor to one very good question. My colleague Annika asked the speaker's opinion. How can cities learn from each other successful reuse, adaptive reuse strategies to take the first steps? So any final thoughts on how cities can really really learn from each other on this topic? If any of the speakers, I won't call you out, all of you, we have 5 minutes, but if anybody has any reflection on that question.
Can I maybe jump in?
Yes, please.
It's a really great question. It's also a really broad question. But I think one thing we try to do, for example, is learn about processes, approaches, methodologies, and then also when we realize the steps we need to follow and the things we need to do, we mobilize any networks we had to ask questions, to go to people, for example, like we would go to Michael and say, you said you have a dedicated institution for identifying and repurposing vacancies. What exactly are you doing there? How, for example? And we would go into all the details. For me, there's another thing that's really important, and we need to do this together, is a very good contextual understanding. Because, for example, office building conversion in a Greek city wouldn't make much sense, and it's so much necessary, we heard today, for example, in France, because Greek cities are very mixed-use cities, very compact cities, and we don't have that opportunity. We have different ones. So it's also really important to understand the context and the needs and the situation. And these two go together for me. So
thank you, Maria.
Hope it helps.
Any other reflections? Either the representatives of cities, of city networks. City networks, you are very much engaged in fostering this exchange, I guess. So if you want to reflect.
I can quickly share from Energy City side that it's something like the exchange that, in my opinion, can happen at the political level, but also at the very technical level. To go more into details, that EU projects and the content of EU project will help doing this. And that I hope we will have other webinars where we can go also more in depth in the technical details, so that it's more addressing directly the difficulties, the concern that technical officers in cities can face on a daily basis. I think it would be a good way forward.
Yeah, I think it's a very good distinction between the political level and the technical. Today we are here at the more technical level, and we hope to continue discussions at the technical level like this. But also, Melanie, if you might want to mention, we have a joint project, Invisible Buildings, which will address also the political level.
Yes, we will, in this project, Invisible Building, we will also organize Mayor's Club or Mayor's Session, where we will invite the local leaders to take position and to discuss this topic of the use of vacant building. So we will do our share to activate both the technical and the political level on this question, yes.
Thank you. Any last comments? We have time left for one last comment. Okay, if not, then thank you very much and enjoyed these 2 hours. It was very rich. I think many of us have to process this for some time. It was a great learning. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for a lot of you stayed for the whole 2 hours, and thanks for the great speakers and the city networks who supported this, and hope to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.